Okay, so I kind of been trying to figure out some stuff with this custom forms plugin, and some of this stuff's getting a little bit hairy, and I need to kind of figure out how to make it work. And I thought maybe it would be fun to just kind of do it on a live stream because why not? Kind of helps keep me focused, and I seem to get a lot done on these when I'm kind of talking through the problems out loud, and I thought maybe some people would find it interesting. So I just kind of want to walk through the general problem to start. So I created this plugin called Tailwind CSS Custom Forms. And there's this little kind of kitchen sink demo page here where you can see out of the box with no configuration. It lets you create these kind of form element classes that look pretty good out of the box, like good enough for just like a basic project, better than what you get with the browser, and they look the same across all browsers, which is nice because it makes it easier to make sure that your design works the same way in different environments. So when I first started on this, we had like a pretty, I call it minimal configuration now because of the sorts of options that I'm planning to add on this stream, but a fairly a minimalistic configuration. The idea was to try and make it as simple to configure as possible so you could kind of just change the pieces that you care about changing and not worry about all of the weird hacky CSS crap that you have to do to make these custom forms work across all browsers. So just kind of burying some of the unimportant stuff and just surfacing the options that you actually care about. And this worked at first, but then I was building out this like workation demo thing that I've been working on for the Tailwind course that I'm working on. And I noticed there was like a bunch of places where the options that we provided were insufficient. So by default, we just allowed you to specify like a background color, period. So what's the background color of all form elements, which works fine when you're talking about doing stuff like this, where it's all just on a white background and everything can be the same and it looks totally okay. But in this UI, it's on like a dark background, and there's sort of this perception of elevation going on where the selects are supposed to kind of look like they're raised off the background, so they're a bit lighter, whereas inputs and checkboxes and radios are supposed to look like they're sort of sunken into the screen, so they're darker. And because the background colors are different, the focus states are also different, right? So this has a focus state of like a light gray background, but these have a focus state of a much lighter gray background. So this is when I kind of realized, well, I need to make it possible to configure these different properties for the different elements independently, not just for like the whole plugin at once. And the other piece was I don't want people to have to create only one style of form for a whole site. So you can see like in this app, the only form elements we have currently are these ones that live on this like dark UI background. But you could totally imagine that while the filters are on a dark background, you might be on like your profile screen or your settings page or something where you're on a light background, and we need to have light form elements there. So just being able to generate one set of styles that all kind of had all the same properties, I think was an interesting starting point. But in practice, I found that the very first app I tried to build, the very first full app UI I tried to build using this plugin, I immediately ran into limitations, even though I feel like I'm not trying to do anything super sophisticated. So what I want to work on is basically how can I make this configuration API deep enough that it can support these use cases. So I need to be able to customize every element independently. I need to be able to create multiple sort of variants, so I can have like a dark set of form elements and a light set of form elements. And I'd like to be able to support even like multiple sizes. So maybe small form elements, medium form elements, and large form elements, and figuring out how to make all that stuff work. So I've been sort of thrashing, trying to figure out how to pull this off, what the API for the customization should look like. Like, should I be making up things like checkbox icon and select icon offset, or should it just be CSS? Should the configuration be like flat, or should it be like nested? Just trying to work all this out. So originally I was looking at it from just like a top level perspective, trying to design this sort of nice minimal API. But that was proving to be hard, and that's kind of what led me to the result that I have here, where I thought I covered all the use cases, but then when the rubber hit the road, I actually wasn't handling all the use cases. So what I've decided to do instead is start with sort of the most verbose, deep API possible, make that work, and then see how much of that configuration I end up using to support this UI. And then looking like, what does my config file look like? Is there a lot of duplication? Is it feel like overly complex? And then look for opportunities to simplify once I know it at least actually supports my use case. So I'm sort of like halfway through this. Halfway is an exaggeration, but I have started on it a bit. And what I did to start is I took the entire plugin and I just copied it into my Tailwind config file for this project so I could just hack on it in line. And everything's kind of in like a disastrous broken state, and it's all just a bunch of experiments and kind of just like sketching out code that doesn't run and stuff. So I'm trying to get things into a better place now. And yeah, I thought it'd be fun to do a stream and kind of just talk through it. So here's kind of what I'm going to do. Ignore these options for now because I'm only focused on the selects, the radios, and the checkboxes, since those are kind of the elements that I have the most fleshed out here. We do have this input here, but I don't really want to worry about that just yet. So this is kind of the API I've decided on. First of all, you're going to specify in your theme that you want to edit and customize the custom forms plugin. And then since I want to be able to support like light forms, dark forms, etc., I need to have like multiple top level keys here. So default is going to be all the options that you want applied to like just form select and just form checkbox. But if you were to add another key here like dark, these would be modifiers that would be added to classes like form select dark. They would automatically generate these classes for you, form input dark. And similarly, you could do like a light one, or you could do a small one or a medium one. And I have to think through exactly how the options merging logic and stuff is going to work, but we'll see. I did see the comment about the iPad stuff, but I wasn't able to reproduce using the iPad simulator, and I haven't tested it on my real iPad yet. So I'll check that out when I have a chance with my actual iPad. Anyway, so this is what I've got so far. I've just got the options necessary for this UI for the select, the checkbox, and the radio. And I'm trying to keep it so that the lowest level possible API is just CSS properties. And the idea is the plugin is going to provide a bunch of defaults that kind of handle all of the cross-browser stuff and a bunch of other annoying, messy stuff. And you only need to provide the things that you want to modify. So in this case, we did change the line height from the default plugin line height. So I'm updating that. We're using a white for the color because it's on a dark background. We're setting the background color, the border color to transparent because we don't want to even have a border, and the border radius to a larger border radius. Now, one option that I'm going to keep that is not a CSS option is this icon option. And what this does is it lets you specify what like this chevron thing should be. And the way it works is it actually sets it as a base64 encoded SVG background image. So I could ask people to just say, okay, well, background image is URL, and then they could base64 encode this themselves, and that would work. But that's really annoying to do. So I've decided that there are going to be some cases where, in addition to the CSS properties, I'm going to expose sort of a nicer, friendlier set of options that help you do things in a little bit more of a convenient way. So then similarly, if we want to change what happens on focus, everything is kind of configured sort of like what you do with like nested SAS or something. So we just have a focus option, and then you have the same options in here. And the other thing I'm thinking is that if someone did want to add like custom CSS, like properties that we don't normally add to the elements, like say they wanted to control the letter spacing, then we would support that too. So they could say like letter spacing dot wide, and we would just automatically merge in any extra properties that they added, just sort of blindly. So I think that'll lead to the most flexible implementation, and then we can sort of look for opportunities to simplify. Now, my hesitation around some of this is you can already see there's some like duplication, right? If you look at the checkboxes and forms have the same background color, they have the same border color, they have a different border radius, And actually, the radio doesn't even need a border radius because we're just going to always hard code that to 100% by default because we want it to be circular. They have the same width and height. They have the same focus background color, the same focus border color, the same focus box shadow, the same checked background color. So these are 99% the same, right? The only difference actually was the border radius. So this is one of those situations where it's like, man, do I really want someone to have to write all this configuration out for both and duplicate it, or like force people to come up with their own solution for avoiding the duplication? But again, my plan is just do it the verbose way, get it working, then look for opportunities to simplify and see if there's ways that maybe we can provide convenience options that sort of consolidate things. So where I was going to start was on the checkbox styling. Now this is just the deployed version, so it's not actually going to update. But what I thought we could do is basically just like kind of hack on some code and try and get it working. So I have everything just kind of in this config file here. I think that's probably not going to be the best way to handle this. I think what we should do is maybe figure out a way to do this where we can actually like write some tests and test kind of how things are working. So I'm on this master branch of Tailwind CSS custom forms. Do I have any other branches? Let's create a new branch called next, where we can just kind of hack on some stuff here. I'm just going to do like a whip commit here. We can squash it because I don't really remember where I was at because I've just been kind of hacking on things. So I did already pull in jest and set up kind of a simple test command, and I've just got an index.test.js file, and this is where we are going to just write some tests. So I started by writing this test the other day before I had even decided on how I was going to make some of this stuff work. And I think we can probably just trash this test and write a new test for what we're going to do. Now, it's kind of an interesting TDD workflow here because normally I would say what we should do is we should write tests to just prove that all the CSS is generated correctly. But this object is huge and has all sorts of stuff in it that's not really even relevant to what we're trying to test. So I think we can start by writing some tests that we know are going to evolve into bigger tests, but that are a little bit more focused to start. So if you check out, I started writing like a bunch of code to try and get some options merging and stuff happening. I pulled in this DLV library, which is a nice way to do like kind of like traverse an object. So I can say from this object here, I have an object here and I want to get like the checkbox key, or I can get like checkbox focus. It's kind of like doing dot notation sort of thing. And it does support dot notation, but array notation is a little bit more flexible because you can use variables and stuff like that. And it just expands the dot notation to the array notation anyways. So I figured why not just do it that way. So heading back to the Tailwind CSS custom forms, why don't we add this delve library. We got an error in our package.json. Of course, stray comma. All right, so we got that library pulled in, and let's start by maybe just taking like what we were trying to do for this checkbox and trying to just craft a test that's going to let us kind of do this. So let's just say checkbox configuration is merged with the defaults. And I don't know what the defaults are yet. I just know that this is what I care about testing. So we're going to have like our options here. And let's just say we're just changing the checkbox options so we won't pass in anything else. And if we just want to start kind of from the inside of this library, because I know like all I really care about right now is testing that these options are merging correctly. Because I know that's kind of a step that we need to handle. It's going to be somewhat complicated. So it's going to be a little bit easier to test that stuff at a level that's a little bit closer to the metal than trying to do it all in like an outside in, sort of make sure the CSS output is correct way. So let's think about what we actually want to test. So I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm not even going to pull in the plugin. the Tailwind plugin. And instead, I'm just going to work on trying to write a function that can merge the checkbox stuff correctly. And we can, let's think. What should we do with it? Right now I'm also writing everything just using the common JS imports and stuff, which is not that nice when you want to have multiple exports. So maybe it would be nice to try and do all this with like an ES6, but then we'd have to set up some build stuff for that, although I think with Jest it's not too hard. But so even simpler, why don't we just try and write a function that merges the checkbox logic, and we'll just do it right in this test, and we'll just try and get that right. And then kind of once we have all the individual pieces tested, we can try and put everything together. So let's start by defining like what we would expect the output of this to be. So let's just call this checkbox. I only really want to worry about testing like this portion of the objects, but I guess we'll just have it include the key. Okay, so let's take a look at like what our defaults are for the checkbox. So if we just find this checkbox, I'm just going to copy this into this test file so we can try and extract the parts that we need. Because there's going to be certain things about this that we don't care about letting people control, right? They're just going to be kind of the browser stuff that people don't have to care about. So like appearance none, that's going to be baked in. Display inline block is going to be baked in. Vertical align middle is going to be baked in. Background origin, border box. I would say we could bake that in. User select none. I'm sort of surprised that that's even necessary. That we don't want, that we don't want. That's going to be baked in. Now the way this background color stuff was working, I'm going to change how this works actually, but we are going to want to keep that. The background image, there is going to be a background image, but it's going to be like, I want to use like the icon syntax for that. So why don't we just have this? This is, none of these keys are correct or anything. Everything is kind of sloppy right now, but we'll figure it out. Background size will be baked in. Position will be baked in. No repeat will be baked in. This will be baked in. Baked in. Baked in. I mean, this whole thing is baked in, really. Okay, so this is really what we want to generate. So let's see, where do we get this stuff from? So here's kind of our old options object. I'm just going to copy that over and we can use it as a reference to extract some of the stuff that we need. I'm going to grab this default theme import because we're probably going to want to use that. That just gives us access to Tailwind's default values since that's kind of what we're referencing. So box shadow is going to be default theme .box shadow .none. And even this one, I think since we actually don't want to even have a box shadow, I think we can just delete that. Okay, so options.checkbox size. These ones are just going to be hard coded to a default of 1M. That's kind of what we decided on as reasonable defaults. Just make the checkbox size stay relative to the sort of text size and the label that you're using. Color. Originally, we were going to use the text color to control the background color, but I think I'm going to just get rid of that option and just rely on the background color. So you can see we're using default theme.colors.blue.500. So we'll actually just use that for these where we were using current color before. Basically, my plan here is to go through, get rid of all these old options references, get things updated to just be using the default theme directly, and then make it possible for us to just start running this test and figure out all this complex merging behavior. Okay, so border color, what did we use for that by default? Theme.bordercolor.default. Border width, I think, is border width.defaults too, if I'm not mistaken. Border radius, I'm pretty sure is border radius.defaults. The default background color, I think we just grab white. The focus shadow is default theme.boxshadow.outline. The border color when it's focused but not checked, that is this default theme colors blue 400. So that's basically what is the color of this blue border. And then when it is checked, there might be some focused, some checked focus options too. Actually, that was something I did actually want to add. So this is where things are going to get interesting because we have to think about like what things should be inherited, what things should not be inherited. So all I really want to do here is say that this should get like a little bit lighter. Where's this theme function coming from? That's not going to work. I guess we can define a theme function. This is just going to take a path, and we're just going to return basically what this delve thing does. Default theme. And this way we don't have to change our code down here. So at least we can write a lot of this code as if we were inside of a config file, and it'll kind of generally work. Okay. Did we miss any options? We got the checkbox icon. So that is actually just this hard-coded icon. Okay, so I'm just going to move these options out of this function. We'll keep them up here, maybe for reference. And that way we can kind of know what's up. Get rid of this too. Okay. So our expected, this is kind of like our input in terms of the defaults. And then we have to kind of decide what we want the expected output to be. So the expected output, I think, is actually going to be, I think this change that we made here we should have actually made up here. So this is the input. And then for the output, all we really want is to take this output and kind of fix on this indentation. So this is just going to be focus now, because I'm sort of imagining that there's going to be another step that actually converts these options to CSS. Right now, I'm just worried about making sure we can merge the options. So even this part, I'm actually not that worried. This part shouldn't be here. It should be in here, because from the user's perspective, I just want to be able to say, okay, when it's focused, this is what the border color should be. I don't want them to have to worry about the focus when it's not checked part. That's going to be like one of those tiny abstractions that we provide. And then this checked doesn't need quotes or anything either. Okay, so this is the defaults. So we should copy this and we'll say const like default options equals this. And we'll say user options equals that. And then really we just want to verify that at the end of the day, what we get out is the user options combined with the other options. So what do we got here? We got 5 lines before focus, and here we've got 6. So basically all we want to do is copy this and then delete the one that isn't present, or keep the one that's not present. So what's the one that we're missing here? Border width. So border width we didn't override. And again, this isn't going to be like the necessarily perfect way to test this. I'm just trying to test that the customization I want to do is going to work, which should be enough of a real world scenario to get us through at least. And then for focus, we've got these 3 options. So we've got border color, box shadow, and background color. Okay, so that's going to replace all of the options provided. And then for checked, we're just overriding the background color. We're overriding the focused background color, which wasn't there by default. And so now we also have to think about the default options are going to have a border color when it's checked. So I guess if we want to have no border color when it's checked, then we're going to have to do this. And I think by default, the plugin doesn't add any border color on focus when it's checked, so we don't have to override that. In some ways, you almost wonder with like this particular example, if we should just, if the implementation from the app's perspective should just be, instead of having a transparent border and having to worry about like manipulating all that crap, just having a border width of 0 so that none of those rules make a difference. But I think this will be fine. Okay, so all that to say, this is kind of our user options, our default options. We basically want to be able to say merge checkbox options. I'll say default options, user options. We want that to equal that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a function called merge checkbox options that we're just going to work on right in the test to start. Default options, user options. And for now, we'll just like return the default options, and we should see that this fails. You know what? One thing I actually kind of am curious to try is let's open this in code, because I don't normally use VS Code, but I was playing with it the other day. And I noticed it has pretty cool jest integration. So like if we have this open, I can right click this test and I can just say run jest. And can we move this over to the right somehow? I don't know how to use jest, or how to use VS Code. Is there no way to just like reposition where this goes? No, that's not what I want. Oh, and hitting Command W doesn't close the terminal, it closes the code. So things are not looking good for us here. Code, unintuitive software. There's got to be a way to move the terminal over to the right, right? That has to be possible. Editor layout, appearance. I swear when I was using this on a larger screen, the terminal by default was was showing on the right, because then I can actually see. Right click on the bar. Ah, perfect. All right, this is way better. Now we can actually kind of see what we're doing. Thank you. Okay, so you can see like a bunch of things are failing, right? So what we want to do is basically start where I was working on this stuff before. So we're actually passing in the checkbox key, which is probably actually not great if we're just going to merge the checkbox options. So let's not pass in that key, because it doesn't really make sense for that key to be passed in, I don't think. And then here we'll just expect this to be this. Okay, so let's think. We're going to want to return a new object. I think we're going to want to splat in all the default options, and then we're going to want to override all the default options with the user options. But then this is only going to work for the very top level stuff. So if we run this test file, we should get a few less differences. But now we have a difference in the icon, which is in the checked section, if I believe. And I would think that we would actually have an error in the focus section too, right? Because like we're expecting, what are we expecting in focus? We're expecting border color transparent and box shadow none. Border color transparent, box shadow none. That's because our focus is overriding the old focus option completely, which is okay, sort of, but not really what we want to be testing. So I think what I'm going to do for the purposes of making the test better is I'm going to say we only want to override, say, the border color and the box shadow, because, no, wait, what do we want to do here? Maybe we don't want to override the box shadow. So that way on focus, this box shadow should actually be persisted. So now if we run this test, we should see a little bit more problems. Yeah, so now we had this problem where we were overriding the entire focus object, and we actually want to deep merge all that stuff. But the thing is, we don't want to deep merge everything. We're going to want to be careful about how it works. So anyways, let's start by fixing the focus section. So now if we say focus should actually be default options dot focus merged with user options dot focus. This should work, although it's not super robust either. So that gets rid of one situation, and then we can do the same thing for checked. And this should get the tests passing, but we're going to want to be more thorough. Okay, so once we have it passing, though, we can sort of introduce situations in the test that we know are not covered. So let me think of a situation that we could test. So say we also had some hover state by default, where maybe by default we had a gray 100 or a gray 200 hover state or something. And we were expecting, I think this actually will work, which is not what I'm trying to prove here. Let's run this test for a second. Okay, so that still works. But say we wanted to do something like, we want to make sure the user's hover options are merged with the built-in hover options. So if the user had an empty hover object, we wouldn't want this to blow away the built-in hover object, which it should right now. Okay, so we can make that work by making sure to... I gotta get used to these keyboard shortcuts. They're not behaving the same way, even though I'm using the Sublime options here. Okay, so we'll do hover, hover. I kind of was hoping we could do all this in one file, but I don't think, or in one test, but I don't think we're going to be able to, because what I really want to prove is that when hover is not provided by the user, that it doesn't blow up. But maybe we can do that with another state, like say like disabled or something. So say we have like a disabled state and we want to do like opacity. I guess we'll just do default theme opacity 50. Yep, this stream is a little bit more me figuring things out as I go than normal, because it's literally just me streaming myself trying to solve some problems. Okay, so that's working, but what I wanted to test is that, like, in theory we should have this implementation be like the same, right? Like we should be wanting to merge that stuff too. And this is where really we should have multiple tests. But if we do this, actually this might work too, because it's still only one level deep. Yeah, because it's trying to splat in undefined, right? Because user options set disabled is undefined. So maybe like a more interesting place to test this is like the focus state for checked. So say for the user options, we want it to say, oh, we actually do have focus state for checked. Are we testing that? Okay, we are testing that, which is fine, but we're not merging it in. Okay, so this is the situation where basically we would want to have, imagine we were doing some focus stuff for the checked one. Say we wanted the box shadow to be like a different color. Maybe we want the box shadow, I don't know, or maybe we want the border color to be like blue 700 or something. Then down here, that should be getting merged. And I think this is honestly, is this going to work? I don't think so, actually. We're going to be missing an option. Okay, so we're missing the border color and focus, but this is still really not what I wanted to test. Basically what we need to do is we need to like duplicate this in here and say default options dot checked dot focus. But I kind of want to prove that this still runs even when the user doesn't specify that, you know? I guess we could try and prove that with like a hover state one. Duplicates an extra line compared to Sublime. So say we have like a hover state for checked where we set the background color to be like blue 400. Then like technically whatever we end up with here should also have this horrible hover state, even though it doesn't really match like the style or whatever. It's just kind of a disaster. Now if we run this, I'm pretty sure this actually is going to work too, because we do have checked defined. So this is definitely too complicated to solve in a single test, because we need to basically test like tons of different inputs to this function. This is why this whole friggin' function or this whole custom forms thing has been painful because it's a lot more work than I want it to be. So, I mean, let's just see if this runs, and then maybe what we'll do is we actually will write a bunch of separate tests. Tedious, really tedious. Checked focus, checked hover. Basically, the problem I'm trying to solve right now is, say like someone didn't actually want to override the checked configuration at all. We're going to have an error because we're trying to access a property on undefined. Right? Cannot read property hover of undefined because there is no checked for the user. So what I'm trying to prove to myself by writing all this stuff is that we actually need to use this delve library to access everything. That's the only way to know for sure that everything actually exists. And maybe the fact that this test still passes is just enough for me to feel confident about that. But I do want to think through like what other situations should we handle. Like what other configuration are people going to want to be able to do? There's no such, actually there is active states for checkboxes, isn't there? Some ways I like to test this by checking what Bootstrap has because, again, pretty good solid framework. Different paradigm, but very well done. So you can see on active, they kind of go a little bit darker. And they have active states for unchecked and active states for checked. So we should probably support customizing the active states too. To some extent anyways. All right, so say that we had, I'm so used to in Sublime selecting up to the previous line when I duplicate, but in VS Code, duplicate includes any lines that you're on. So like if I do this and duplicate, it duplicates the whole line, not just the selection, which I find very unsettling. Maybe I could get used to that. Maybe that's actually like nicer, but not what I'm used to currently. So say we had active, maybe we wanted to make the background color like gray 300 or something, just to make it a little bit different. And then checked active, we want to make it like blue 600. So we'll just add that there. So it should probably fail. No, of course it doesn't fail. And I think the reason it doesn't fail is because the active stuff is handled by this top level stuff, even though that's naive because that means that we're blowing out the default active with the user active. And then the checked active is also being handled here, but also getting blown out instead of being merged. In some ways, I almost wonder if like, if we just were to do like yarn add Lodash, Lodash don't they have like a deep merge? Deep merge. Is merge already a merge deep? So I wonder if like we actually can be pretty naive about the deep merging. Like, do we actually have to handle special keys in a special way, or do we literally just want to deep merge the whole thing? I kind of bet we can just deep merge the entire thing. Okay, we added Lodash. Let's just see, out of curiosity, if we just do merge equals require Lodash merge. If we just return which order are these merged in? Okay, left to right. So if we just merge default options, user options, all of a sudden this becomes like barely even worth testing. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is going to work because I'm pretty sure that's all we're doing. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, let's just do it this way for now. So whatever, we'll just have this big disgusting test. And then probably we should test that checkbox. I want to test like the configuration generates a CSS and JS object that makes sense. I am using the Sublime key bindings, but things still don't work the same way. So I don't want to, what I basically want to do is I want to test that like given an object like this, that it spits out CSS that I would expect in terms of like the focus, not focus, blah, 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 blah stuff. So why don't we take this as a input. And I guess we'll just do like const options equals this. And then we'll say expect to equal. Basically what I want to do is I want to write some function that transforms this into like a checkbox class. You know what I mean? So we'll just say like make checkbox or something. And I'm just going to grab the checkbox CSS, and we're just going to basically make sure that we get this generated. So we only want like the rules, I would say, and the name is something that we would assign from the parent context. All right, so let's see. For box shadow, isn't there a default box shadow? I guess there's not a default box shadow, so there's not going to be a default box shadow. I'm just going to move some of this stuff up. Anything that's like hard coded, and then we'll do the other stuff later. Okay, so we want a height of 1em and a width of 1em. Color is going to be, I don't think anything because it doesn't matter. So that's just one place where the current implementation is drifted from kind of how I want it to work from now on. Border color is going to be transparent. Border width is going to be, I guess we can just say what was it? Theme border width on default. Scrap that. Some of this stuff is like mix mashed. Ugh. so many tests will have to be written to make this all feel totally bulletproof. It's one of those things that would be actually like faster, I feel like, to just like hack it out and see if it was seemed correct. Because writing like a truly exhaustive test suite for this is going to be quite a big amount of work. And so far these tests actually kind of, they don't suck, but like they're not making me feel like I have more I don't feel like I have more of a grasp on the problem. Like I still feel like everything's kind of just like scattered. Normally the benefit of writing tests for me is feeling like I have sort of offloaded a bunch of like trying to figure out how everything works in my head into the computer, but I don't feel like I've really gotten that here. Okay, so some of these things. Okay, so outline is going to be always like that. The background color for focus, we decided was going to be that. We decided that we're going to have a box shadow on focus, so that's fine. Focus not checked, so this should be using this value too. And actually this should be gone, I think. Wait a second, how the hell is this supposed to work? So it's like for some reason I was saying I want the border color on focus to be the focus border color. I'm trying to understand why this was even necessary. Because I'm pretty sure this checked one should take precedence over the focus one as long as the checked rule is defined after the focus rule. Because that's what I was trying to avoid. I was trying to avoid when you focused it when it was checked, adding the wrong border color. I think probably what I actually want to do to be like truly safe is no, that doesn't seem right. This seems like that should just be accurate already. Doesn't seem, this feels totally unnecessary to me. I guess we could always test it out. It's one of those things that's kind of like annoying to test though. All right, anyways, moving right along. Background color. It's going to be this one. Border color, I think, was going to match that. Or did we have it set as transparent still? Yeah, it is transparent. Background image. I'm just going to copy this. And I guess we'll pull in this is that correct? What's it complaining about here? I thought that should be right. Expected a comma. Why is this using TypeScript bindings? Doesn't even make any sense. No problem. But we'll pull that in. Just grab it from up here. Yeah, this is messy. Background size. I don't know that I care to make that customizable. Same with the position and stuff. It's so hard to know, like, it's ridiculous how much customization I need to expose, because people might as well just write the CSS. Like, we're barely saving them anything, but I think people still like feeling like, okay, I'm using a plugin. There's like a curated API. I feel like it's going to work properly, instead of feeling like they have to figure it all out themselves, even though they still are basically doing all the work themselves. It's more useful when you're not customizing it, really. This stuff doesn't have to change at all, except for this. This is like some specific make things work in a crazy cross-browser way. I mean, this is really whatever. This whole thing is just not very fun, is it? So you know what? I'm kind of thinking. Let's try and do this in a fun, more visual way. This is too unpleasant. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to just make this work for this. We're going to run it locally in the browser. I'm going to have to get this config compiling again, which is going to be a challenge, but that's okay. Let's just do const. Let's basically comment out everything except our config. And we'll delete this. Actually, no, we won't delete that. I want to keep everything here, basically. We can keep that, except we'll comment it out. And I think I missed a line here. We'll just do require Tailwind CSS custom forms for a second. Just see if I can get this stupid thing building again, because we're kind of in a broken state on this branch. Oh, it's hot in my office today. Okay, so it's loading now, which is good. So if we have this open, we're using all the defaults. Everything looks terrible. So let's go over to the search filters thing. And I guess I'm just going to start by going through, and I guess just like removing some of the things that we were doing with utilities that I'd like to just bake into the plugin configuration. So this doesn't have to change. Again, this isn't even real. I just had it there so I could kind of hack on the form input styling. This can go, but we should remember that value. And then we can do the same thing for all these. Okay, so we should see things just go straight to the defaults in theory. Okay, so now we're just back to like what the form plugin does by default. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take the form plugin itself, which is this function. I'm going to copy this into our config file. I'm actually going to delete everything above here because screw it. Because we're actually just bringing a lot of it back right now anyways. So I'm going to say const custom forms equals, and this is going to be pulled in already. We've already got the default theme. We actually already have some of this stuff. Just got to define twice. Okay. Okay, so is it actually having a problem right now or not? Sorry that this stream is a little bit less forward progress feeling than usual. But that's the nature of trying to figure out this stupid thing. Okay, so basically this is where we're going to rework how a lot of this stuff actually works now. So I'm going to uncomment this. Or I'm going to comment it still, actually. I'm going to replace this plugin with the inlined version of it. Right, and then I'm going to uncomment this, and we're just going to try and slowly make it work. So maybe what we'll do is we'll start with selects this time. So we'll just comment out this configuration. We'll just work on the selects. We'll just try and get this to work. Probably things are going to break in interesting ways. So let's see. So for the select, right now it gets its options by like grabbing all this stuff and merging in the custom forms stuff. So what we actually want to do, I think, is we need to generate these components for each modifier, but maybe we'll worry about the modifier stuff second. So why don't we just start by saying like const select options equals theme at custom forms dot select. Otherwise, we'll use like default options. I guess an empty object, and we'll merge this stuff. So let's pull in Lodash. Do you already have Lodash in this project? No. Yarn add Lodash. Yeah, I should set is open to true on the filters panel again. This way when we refresh, it's always there. Good call. All right, so we said that if we pull in this merge package from Lodash, that kind of does the deep merge stuff for us, and things will kind of work. So in general, what we want to do is we want to merge like default options dot select with the theme custom forms options, and we should probably merge these into an empty object since that's a mutable operation. Okay, so we have no default options defined, so let's start by defining default options. Const default options equals, and what we'll do is we'll just grab the stuff from the select, wherever that is, and we'll just figure out, like, starting from scratch again after that failed, trying to do it in tests because that ended up not even feeling helpful for some reason, which is a little odd, but just because there's so many properties, such big complicated objects. Okay, so background color is going to be default theme.colors.white. Border color is border color.default. God, same crap over and over again. But I think maybe this will be the time where we get some progress. This will be border radius.default. The box shadow, we're just going to have none. Originally, there was like a box shadow option in case people wanted to have a box shadow, but now I just want to have no box shadow. Padding top. For this, I don't even want this to work this way. I just want to have like a padding by default. And we're going to grab spacing 2 and spacing 3. But I think we need a right one as well. So we'll have to do like the full thing. Because selects have this unfortunate problem of having a different right padding. And if we define our own padding left, right, top, bottom separately, which is normally what I would say you should do, it actually makes it a little bit harder for people to override things, because then if they only want to override the right padding, oh no, I guess that would still work. So yeah, maybe we can do the mouse separate options, whatever. So I have this is actually supposed to be 2, not 3. This can be 3. Now, The padding right, I did this weird thing based on the old API where someone would specify how far from the right they want the icon to be and also specify the size of the icon. And then I would do some calculations to determine how much padding should be on the right. I think I want to keep it simpler than that to start. So if we're assuming that we have like a default select icon offset of spacing 2, which is 0.5 rem, and we've got a size of 1.5 m, which is really 1.5 rem because we're using the default font size, then we can say that we've got 1.5 rem plus 0.5 plus 0.5 is 2.5 rem, which is, that's the 10 spacing size. So if we just did like a hard-coded one, just to get us started, we can think about simplifying or improving this stuff later. This should be okay. So now the question is, like, do we hard code in a font size or do we let it get inherited? I think probably we hard code it in. Okay, so base, this will be default theme dot line height dot normal, I think is what we call it. Appearance none. Now that can get deleted because we're gonna keep that hard coded in. The background image is not what we care about. Instead, we care about the concept of an icon, which we're gonna say is this. We use gray 500 for the color. We might want to add an option for an icon color at some point too. So that is hard-coded. This thing with the select icon offset, which was like kind of specifying where the icon should be. What ones did we just delete, by the way? Appearance none, so that one actually is not an option. It's hard for me to keep in my head, like what should be configurable and what should not be configurable. This background position thing, I think we can just hard code in the select icon offset of spacing 2. And someone can override this background position if they want. Background repeat, that's non-configurable. Background size is configurable. But again, I think we just want to configure it by letting someone specify the background size. That's non-configurable. This is coming from there. So this almost does need to be like an... There almost does need to be like an icon color configuration option because people need to be able to specify the color both for this SVG and have that get used automatically for this. This is kind of all stupid how this works. This is really just for supporting printing on IE11 with custom checkboxes. So it's not that important, but it is something to consider. Like, how could you make that customizable? I mean, I guess if we just had an icon color, the crappy thing is if we do have an icon color option, then how do we make that even accessible to the icon itself? Like, how can I use this value in the same object? It's almost like icon needs to be like a function that takes an argument. Customization color kind of matters on print because you can still set the background color and all that stuff. I'm just trying to think, like, is there a better way besides this for defining the icon color. Just trying to think if this is an awkward API. Like if someone wants to specify a custom icon, they can specify it as a function, but they don't really have to. They could just specify it with the fill hard-coded and then duplicate that for the icon color. Let's try and make this work for now, because as gruesome as it is, it kind of feels like a necessary thing to be able to do. None of this stuff matters. This needs to be this value, but again, this isn't really an option per se. This is just a hard-coded thing. Now we do need focus options. Outline none is hard-coded. Box shadow is going to be default theme box shadow.outline, and border color is going to be what did we say our border color was? Focus border color, default theme colors.blue 400. Man, this is still hard to keep in my head. Trying to support like this degree of customization is really unpleasant. Okay, so now that we've got select options, I guess we should actually keep this defined so we don't break the checkboxes and stuff, so things at least still compile. So now we can go through where we have form select and we can start replacing things. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to take this form select call. I'm going to pull this out into a separate, into a separate plugin. What the hell? Did I not grab enough stuff? Okay. Also switching back to Sublime because it's the best editor. Sorry. All right, so we're going to go add components. And now we can add the select and isolation. All friggin' 35 lines of it. All right, so most of this stuff is just going to become select options dot. So why don't we just do kind of a naive replace here, and then we can go through and smooth out the inconsistencies. So there is no select options dot box shadow by default, and we don't want it to be undefined. So we're going to want to basically, we only want to whitelist options that actually exist at the top level here. So this is going to be select options dot padding top. This is going to be select options dot padding right. Man, I'm so amazed at how much mental effort it is to make what I feel like should be a simple plugin. Okay, font size, line height, that's fine. Again, let's move the ones that are kind of hard coded to the top. This is just going to be select options dot background size. So that simplifies that a bit. This more complicated one we'll keep at the bottom just because it's more complicated. Background position. Again, this is one of those ones that most people aren't going to change probably, so If people need to change it, they can just learn about changing it in the documentation. And so this is just going to be select icons or select options.icon. And then I think what we want to do is do we want to, like we want to basically, I want to be able to have the box shadow, right? So you can see down in my configuration, I don't have it here, but I do want this to work. I want to be able to say box shadow dot default, because I want the select to have a slight box shadow. But because I don't want to hard code in a list of supported CSS properties, I want to be able to grab that box shadow without grabbing a bunch of other stuff. So, I mean, in the most naive way possible to think about this, we could say const extra select options equals, and I'll show you a little trick. Basically, we want to define a function that receives an object and destructures out what it doesn't need, and then just returns the remaining stuff. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to use this little fun little syntax here to make a list of all the things we don't want somebody to be able to override, if that makes sense, or things that we don't, things that are valid options that don't make sense to pull in. And actually thinking about this actually simplifies some things in my head. We actually don't need to specify all this stuff, because all we really care about is that, like, no one's supposed to pass in the icon, right? Because this option is like not meant to be used for that. Icon color is not meant to be used. Also, I can't forget that this icon is actually a function that we have to call, passing in select options dot icon color. They're not supposed to, like, focus is not a real CSS option. Like, the real CSS is and colon focus, right? So we don't want someone to be able to blend in this focus thing on its own. So I think that might be enough for now, and then we can collect the rest of the options into rest. And then we can take this background image, move this up here, we can say dot 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 rest here to blend in the rest of the options. Or sorry, extra select options is what this should be. And that way we don't have to specify everything. We only really have to specify the hard-coded stuff, and then everything else comes from configuration, except for like a couple whitelisted things. But we're gonna have to do this for basically everything. Now this is kind of useful because it sort of documents like what the special keys are at a glance. So this MX expand thing, this is okay. This is going to become select options to icon color. And I think what we're going to find too is the only values that we're ever referencing here directly are probably from this list. I think. Actually, here, this is fixing some padding for print in IE. I think this is because the chevron takes up space in IE, so Probably we want this to be padding left, which sounds really stupid, but I think it's the best solution. And since it's just for print, it doesn't really matter. But basically what this fix was trying to do is it was trying to take normally the right padding on a select, because there's a chevron, is like way wider, but we don't actually want it to be wider anymore because the chevron just goes on print. Things are done differently. We actually want the left and right to feel approximately the same. Okay, so then outline, none. Now focus box, shadow, and focus border color. Those just come from focus now. So I think we can actually just select options dot focus. The only place I'm nervous here, and maybe we would just have to test it, but technically someone might want to change the chevron on focus, right? Like say like they went from like say they inverted the color on focus or something like that, then the icon color needs to change too. So technically somebody might want to pass in the icon color here. They might even want to like change the icon on focus. Like that's something maybe we should support one day, but for now maybe we just don't sweat it too much. What did I do? Okay, let's see if this compiles. Whoops. So confusing. Okay, we're gonna select options to icon is not a function. I find that surprising because I feel like, are we overriding it down here? That's the only explanation for that. Okay, we are. I think we should do this, and we should define this as a function that accepts the icon color. The only other way I could think to do this is like we make it so you can leave a placeholder in here, but that seems silly. Although I do think we should probably make it so that this could also work with just a string icon. Anyways, I should probably just type serve the full thing so that I don't have to keep doing it this way. So now what do we have? Select options to icon is not a function. Still. Okay, that's surprising to me. So let's log this out before we do it. What? Where's my log? So when that doesn't work, you always got to do try and make your mark in the terminal. That's an empty object. Okay. That is surprising to me. Why would that be an empty object? This isn't an empty object. This isn't an empty object. Oh, it is undefined in an empty object. Okay. What are we doing wrong here? Okay, this one is probably because it's nested under a default key, which we forgot about. Okay, so we can fix that one pretty easily. So customforms.default.select. Now default options, unless I typoed something. That seems suspicious to me. Default options. We didn't put it under a select key. Okay. So now I'm pretty sure we're going to see our select options and probably things will even compile. Okay, they compile. All right, so, there's our selects. Something went a little awry with our background size here. So let's figure that out. So for background size, we have it at 2, when I think originally it was 1.5M or something. Yeah, 1.5M. My undo history is gone anyways, for some reason. So we'll just do that as like 1.5 rem, which is, I guess, 6, right? Spacing 6. Okay, and the drop shadow is there, and that stuff seems generally okay. So now if we wanted to do some more customization though, it's hard to know what would be necessary. Like if you wanted to customize the active state or all this other stuff. So maybe as a first step, let's try and make it so that we can pass through a string for this if we wanted to. It's going to break, but it shouldn't be that complicated. Should just be a matter of basically checking if this is a function. What's the fastest way to check if something's a function in JavaScript? JavaScript, check if function. Could use Lodash, but I'm always curious if there's like an even faster way to do it. Underscore, or Lodash it is. Yeah, I saw that solution, but it kind of looked a little suspect because if you pass it a prototype, which I guess is true, I don't know, whatever. I feel fine about using the function. So is function select options icon. Otherwise, whatever. Okay. Let's rerun because seems like errors in the config file trigger it to just break. Okay, so that still works. Okay. All right, that seems fine. Maybe we'll try and get the checkbox done too and then wrap it up because we're probably streaming for like 1 billion years here. Let's see. How long have we been going for? Going for at least an hour and a bit, probably. Boring stream. I thought it would be, I thought streaming would maybe help me light a fire under my ass to figure this stuff out faster with more confidence, but instead it's not helped at all and probably has bored everyone to tears. That's okay. You can all be bored, I guess. Yeah, an hour and a half. Jesus. All right. Let's get rid of this crap. We're just kind of like group these into these annoying chunks. So we got select options, extra select options, default options. The checkbox one is the most confusing one anyways, so. Okay. Again, just kind of get the shape of this crap in here and then cut the cruft. So there's not going to be an appearance. There's no box shadow by default. We don't have to worry about display. We do have to worry about height and width. We don't have to worry about vertical line. We don't have to worry about color. We do have to worry about border color and border width and border radius and background color. Background origin border box is going to be hard coded. User select none will be hard coded. Color hard coded. Hard coded. Hard coded. That won't be hard coded though. This part is the part that we were just not sure what the hell this was all about, but we can tackle that in the actual CSS section. For the checked stuff, background color is not going to be hard coded, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. Background image is going to come from an icon prop or an icon parameter. So used to JavaScript libraries or component libraries. Background size will be hard coded, although should background size just be an option that we pass in? I guess so. We'll pass it in as an option. And if someone wants to override it, they can. Like, even if it was hard coded, they could still override it, but whatever. We might as well just make it a default option. Position. Might as well make it an option. Background repeat, there's no real reason for that to be an option. I'm kind of conflicted. Like, should we just make everything options? Like, even like the flex shrink 0, user select none, blah, 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 because it just will result in less CSS if we make it actually an option instead of making the user like declare it again after and just having 2 lines of CSS. So in that sense, I almost wonder if everything should be an option, which makes me want to revisit what we did for the select. Like, even make this stuff options. The only part that's hard to do as an option is this, because it needs to, because we want to call this SVG to data URI thing. I mean, you technically still could. It will just generate a little bit more CSS. Conflicted. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll make everything in options, but I'll just put the hard-coded options to the top here so I can at least see them separated. The error about the Tailwind config file, check your Webpack build settings and make sure that you're not referencing tailwind.js as a path somewhere. You should only have to say require Tailwind CSS and not specify a path at all, and that should automatically pick up tailwind.config.js. It should only be looking for tailwind.js if you specifically told it to look for tailwind.js. So there's a chance that maybe you followed like an outdated tutorial, because the version 0, it used to be called tailwind.js, but now it's tailwind.config.js. So just might have some outdated code that you copied from somewhere. Fuck, this is brutal. Okay, so box shadow. We decided there was no box shadow. Color, no color. All right, so background color is white. I think all this stuff is the same, right? Border color, border width, border radius. And then these we're just going to hard code to 1M because that's whatever, it's fine. I guess in that sense I could also hard code the background size chevron too, so that way if like for whatever reason you did increase the font size and things changed, like the icon would kind of grow with it in some reasonable way. I don't know. Seems okay. So focus, this will just become focus like this. I guess we'll just still stick with keeping everything as an option, which I guess I'll do the same thing for this then. And then down here we can get rid of this. I guess I'll even grab this stuff and move it up into the form. Select here. If this is what we've decided that we're going to do anyways, just to avoid unnecessary stuff. Yeah, I mean, that is what I'm trying to do with this plugin, is just apply the bare necessities, and that was the plan originally. But then what I found was that by just applying the bare necessities and trying to layer things on with utilities, there were certain situations where you couldn't accomplish something with utilities. For example, notice how the focus state for the checkbox goes gray when it's checked. That's because I specified a focus state when it was unchecked, but I have no utility class to say when it's checked and focused, make it a different color, and the utility takes precedence. So ultimately what I've just realized is that I was hoping to just have a very simple base form elements that you could layer utilities on to style. But what I've found is that doesn't work. There's certain situations that you wouldn't be able to make customizations with utilities alone. So instead, I need to make that configuration possible at the plugin level. So I need to be able to say, well, I want my dark inputs to turn this color on focus when they're unchecked, and I want them to turn like lighter indigo when they are checked and focused, you know? So it's unfortunate because that's not how I wanted this to turn out, but I still think it's a useful plugin, especially because out of the box with no configuration, it gives you like pretty reasonably decent looking stuff that you can work with for just a simple prototype. Or, I mean, I think these look as good as elements do in a lot of real apps too, right? So, yeah, I'd like for it to be simpler, but it's not. Okay, so the only reason that I'm moving this stuff, by the way, into the configuration, like the default configuration options, is because if I baked it in to the function call that adds the elements, and then someone wanted to override something, you'd end up with like an extra line of CSS. So say like for whatever reason, we had vertical align middle on checkboxes, and someone wanted to make it vertical align top, they'd end up with vertical align middle and vertical align top defined. And of course their override would still work because it would defeat the previous one. But by moving everything to configuration, we're actually stripping out duplicate keys, and that saves some, couple bytes over the wire. It doesn't really matter, but it ends up being simpler anyways. Okay, so yeah, we were going through these options. So the focus box shadow is going to be this. I guess this is all going to be the same. Now this is the part that was like confusing to me, is we had, for some reason, it seemed like the only way to make this work was to have border color be defined in focus not checked. But if the border color is defined in checked too, then this should override that one. So, I mean, we're getting close to being able to like test this hypothesis anyways. So why don't we, maybe we'll just comment at this one line, and we can alternate between those two in a second and see if everything works. Okay, so for checked, we are setting the background color to be current color, and we are relying on the text color to change things. I've changed my mind about how I want to do that. I just want to use the checked color for the background color. So, and we'll use it for the border color too, since we want it to sort of appear like there's no border. The checkbox icon code is going to end up being pretty similar. Because you might want to be able to change the check color depending on the background color you're using. So we should probably just make this work the same way. And actually this has to just be commented out because this isn't even the CSS portion. This is just going to be checked, not int, checked. Background image is going to go away. Move background size up, that up, that up. And we did have icon color being passed through, right? And in this case, I think the icon color is white. Did I grab the right? Where did I get this from? Checkbox icon. I don't think I actually fixed this, did I? No, that's not the right icon. Okay. So grab this, paste it in here, and then we'll use this stupid template string to fix this to be icon color. Oh my god, I'm pasting all this in the wrong place. All right. Jesus. Again, there's just so many lines and properties. It's so hard to keep track of everything. So this, I'm guessing, is the checkbox. I don't think there's any plugins that I really wish existed that don't already exist. The main ones I think are going to be most useful are like transition, transforms, animations, and some people have already made plugins for that stuff. I still want to make official plugins for that. That'll probably have a little bit of a different API than what some people have decided on for the third-party ones, but those are the ones that I think are most important right now. Okay, geez. This MS check stuff, obviously that's not anything that is going to be configurable. Okay, so now we can copy this, paste that down here, grab this checkbox definition, copy that and paste that here, delete the checkbox from here, and then we got to update a bunch of this stuff. I think this actually is going to be pretty simple. So we're going to have checkbox options. It's going to be default options dot checkbox, checkbox. Then we're going to have extra checkbox options. Now I think the things we want to pull out are similar. Focus, checked. This is fucking dark actually, because the icon and stuff are nested. We have to do this a little bit differently. Okay, so we need the extra checkbox options, which is going to be everything except checked in focus. But then we need like the extra checked options, which is going to be everything in checked except icon color and icon, and possibly focus and hover eventually too. Const extra checkbox checked options. Jesus Louises. So it's going to be dot checked. We're going to pull out icon, icon color, and rest. And then, if I'm not mistaken, we can just go checkbox options. Oh wait, no, this is extra checkbox options, right? Which is probably a bad name because now it's not really extra, it's like all of them, but whatever. And then I guess we need the focus ones too. What did we do for this one for focus? We just spread in the select options dot focus. Okay, actually, I guess that's okay. So here we would just do checkbox options dot focus. This, I'm not sure what to do about this yet. What did we do for the focus? Did we kind of do it the way that we wanted to? Yeah, we're going to see if this works. And then for checked, we're going to say checkbox options. Or actually, what did I call it? Extra checkbox checked options. And then we're going to have the same background image deal. Except this is going to be checkbox options dot checked dot icon. Oh my god, this is rough. And we kept everything in there, I believe, yeah? So then this MS check thing, we just want to get extra checkbox options to border width. So this is interesting in some ways because it does kind of make it clear like what's the weird stuff that we're doing related to browser compatibility. Anything that's remaining in here that's not just like splatting in some arguments is the stuff that you have to do to make custom stuff work. And you know what? That's not even totally true because some of that stuff is buried up here, like the appearance none and stuff like that, but that's okay. So let's just see for a second what we even have here. Probably a compilation error. Oh, maybe not. Okay. So here's our checkbox. I mean, it seems to kind of be working the way I wanted it to, and this is without doing that not checked stuff. I'm going to test something for a second. I'm going to find where this amenities div is. Just going to make this white so we can tell what it looks like. So let's just look at the dev tools and see like if this is focused and checked, which rule is sort of taking precedence? Yeah, the border color for checked is taking precedence, just like I would expect it to. Even though it's focused. So the focus border color is being overridden, so I'm not sure what I was doing before. Like I'm not sure why I thought this rule was necessary. I wish I could remember. Focus not checked. Set the border color to the focus border color. Wonder why that mattered. The only thing I can think of is I was trying to do something where I was using I was trying to make the whole icon the background and I needed this for some reason. I kind of have a vague memory of that. Okay, so now we want to get like our customization working for checkboxes. So let's just try and like intuitively write the stuff that we want. So I guess we already have most of it here. So our icon color is this. And you know what? Here's actually a good example of why this icon color thing is valuable now that I think about it. Say you wanted to change the icon color, but you didn't want to change the icon. Like, say I was totally happy with Tailwind's default checkbox icon, but I wanted to use a different color. Instead of having to provide a whole SVG with the color baked in and trying to find, oh, where's the SVG, I could just provide just the icon color, and that will work. So that's cool. So let's see what we get when we save. All right. So one thing that's grim is, see how we've got a, you might not be able to see this actually. There's a little bit of a blue border on these. So part of our overrides here, we're going to want to say border color is transparent. We don't want a visible border. And that should go away. Yeah, so that's a little bit better now. Now, one thing that sucks is you can't see the focus state. Like, I'm cycling through those and you can't see them. So why don't we say, like, let's get this working, where we say, like, checked focus. I want the background color to be like indigo, say 400 or something, or 300. Pretty sure this isn't going to just work out of the box. No. So let's make that work. And then I'm going to stop. All right, so basically here where we're doing extra checkbox checked options, we're going to want to rip out focus here. And here we're going to want to say and focus checkbox options dot checked dot focus. Now we should make sure that we provide a default for this. See how there's no focus here? I guess it would just be undefined, so it would be okay. Let's see what happens anyways. Yeah, okay. So now you can see as I cycle through, the color changes a little bit. All right, so that's pretty decent. So I think there's going to be more things that we're going to want to enable. Again, I'm going to want to get the active support working, stuff like that. This is kind of crappy. I basically need to get this done tomorrow because the biggest blocker for me recording this Tailwind course that I'm working on is making sure that I have a good story when I'm teaching the course for how to do these custom forms. And I don't want to get into the minutia of teaching people how to do all this really disgusting IE11 hacks and stuff like that. I'd rather just be able to teach people, hey, there's this plugin that we made that makes this stuff easier. And then one of the, topics in the course can be how to install a plugin and how to configure a plugin, because that's useful stuff to learn anyways. So I really want to get this plugin done, release 1.0, like probably Wednesday. And once I'm sure that it kind of fits all the needs that I have, then I can record the course and use the plugin in the course and we'll be good to go. So thanks for hanging out and suffering through this with me and for chiming in with your help. Hopefully it was interesting. And yeah, I'll be back with some more streams soon, because I do need to, one thing I realized is we didn't do this drop down, which I think is going to be an important thing to cover. Like when you click this profile thing, we want to have a drop down pop out. So maybe I'll do a stream on that tomorrow if I have time while I'm working on this plugin. Anyways, thanks for checking it out, and see you soon.